Welcome to the Fantasy Football Forge. My name is Steve, and today we're going to do more than just a typical mock draft Monday. We're going to be talking about stacking, the strategy of stacking, which if you're not familiar with it, generally it refers to the idea of picking a quarterback and a wide receiver from the same team and benefiting from the mutual success that they will have in big games. There is evidence to show that this actually does benefit your chances of winning something like best ball, I think, at a greater rate than it does for redraft. But I will be doing a video later this week more focusing on stacking and redraft and my rankings. But as I was saying, everything in this video is really going to come down to ADP, and that's where this data started from. These are the ADPs pulled from Underdog Fantasy's website. So to start this video off, I will be going through this tool, which I will try to put up on the website over the weekend. It is currently Friday afternoon, and this video should be going up next Monday. So a few days to hopefully have time to do that. So if you like what you see here, should be an article, and then along with that, the final result that you'll see here shortly up on the website, www.theffforge.com. Link should be down in the description. In this episode, I will be going through a few things. First, I will go through like the easiest quarterbacks to make a stack happen with, whether it's a good stack or a bad stack, doesn't really matter for that list. We'll quickly go through that. Then I'll go through some of the targets from different points in the draft, from the group of early quarterbacks, group of mid quarterbacks. I have them segmented into about 8 different groups of where they tend to go in kind of little groupings throughout the draft. And then I'll go through a couple of strategies that I built, which I will be then trying to pull off in an actual Underdog Fantasy draft. I will be doing 2 drafts. One of them will be we'll call it a power stack, which will be just trying to get the absolute best quarterback and wide receiver stacks, as many of them. And I made it so that way I should be able to pull it off in the first 6 rounds, get the 3 quarterbacks and their best wide receivers, which you can imagine would be pretty sweet. So we'll see if I pull that off. And then I have 3 even-keeled attacks. We'll get to that soon. So first of all, let's start with what you're seeing on the screen here. This is the information pulled off of Underdog Fantasy's website as far as the ADPs. Check that. I split apart the quarterbacks and the wide receivers. Another quick thing, so as I said, generally stacking refers to quarterback and wide receiver. It can refer to wide receiver and running back, wide receiver, tight end. Any combination technically is a stack. For purposes of this video, there's plenty that I have to say about the wide receiver and quarterbacks. Not a whole lot of information that I got out of the tight ends, although I did come up with a couple of things, so maybe in the future I'll do something about a couple of the tight ends. Back to the data on the screen, split those quarterbacks apart from the wide receivers, then I went through the ADPs, top 12, so first rounders, split all of those apart, and over here you can see I have some highlights. Those highlights refer to this column. What this column is the difference between the ADP of the quarterback and the wide receiver. So Cooper Kupp obviously goes at the very early portion of the draft, and it's not for about another 148 picks, roughly, that Matt Stafford usually goes in drafts. And since that was the biggest deficit in the first round, gave that a little green highlight as a very easy stack to make happen. And I went through and I did that for each round as far as the green goes. And then for these yellow, orange, and red columns, I went through, and anybody who was within 24 picks or less, gave them a little yellow sign. So plus or minus, it doesn't matter, because it doesn't really matter if the quarterback's taken first or the wide receiver's taken first to call it a stack. It's always a stack, whichever case. Orange highlights were for top 18 or less, so between 18 and 24 is yellow. And then anything 12 picks or less, so by ADP should be impossible for you to get both of them, kind of technically. But not technically, because you could have 2 back-to-back picks. Still, generally speaking, going to be really tough to make those happen. So, for instance, Devonta Smith gets taken within 4 or 5 picks of Jalen Hurts. So the odds of you being able to get both of them going to be pretty low. Obviously not impossible, but unlikely. Those colors will become important. They are, I'll show you right now, they are part of this chart over here. For each round, I highlighted those colors, so it's a little bit easier to see. Not only we'll get to this portion, but this generally means if it's green, it's going to be that it's an easy quarterback to make the stacks happen with, but also gives us another signal of Jalen Hurts is a pretty tough quarterback to stack with A.J. Brown or Devontae Smith. Both of them get taken around the same range, orange and red there. Back to the next thing that I did, as I mentioned before, took all these differences between the quarterback and the wide receiver, turned them all positive, and then I have two columns here. Took the average. So, for instance, we can do the Kansas City Chiefs. There are 5 potential wide receivers in any draft that could be drafted, and took this number and took the average of those 5 wide receivers, and the higher the number, I assume that means, in general, the easier it is to then stack those two. So for a wide receiver, Kansas City wide receiver generally pretty darn easy. Not necessarily the easiest out of the bunch based on the average difference. But then here I have the sum total, which takes into factor, how many shots are you going to get to make this stack happen is really the big thing for this sum total grouping. Between the two of them, I figure I have a pretty good picture of the easiest quarterback stacks to make happen. Those are the numbers that you'll see over here. Just left them on this chart. No particular reason. Most of what's happening on this chart is in these 3 columns. So over in this column here, we have the wide receiver. Within the wide receivers, what number wide receiver are they taken off of the board generally? So Stephon Diggs, usually the 5th wide receiver taken off of the board. Green is going to be good. Yellow, above average. Orange, below average. Red, bad. Generally how that goes. Each of these columns and that green to red, as you can see on column D, is independently colored. And then over here we have the round that quarterback is typically taken in, and the round that said wide receiver is typically taken in. And then, as I pointed out earlier, I carried over some of those easier per round targets into this chart for whatever that's worth. Mostly these yellows, reds, and oranges do help a little bit with some of the decisions that I made here. But let's start out with the top 10 easiest quarterbacks to make a stack happen with this year so far based on current ADP. At number 1, we have a tie between Patrick Mahomes, the number 1 quarterback, and all the way at the bottom, Baker Mayfield. If you think about it, that does make some sense because, well, we're drafting these wide receivers here quite low compared to how late we're taking Baker Mayfield, and pretty much the opposite for Patrick Mahomes because A, he has Travis Kelce that he's also throwing the ball to. B, we expect that ball to get split apart, and we don't really know who's going to be on the field the most and who's going to, if there will even be a single favorite target outside of Travis Kelce. Will there be another Juju Smith from last year who... Even Juju was number 38 wide receiver on the season. I think that's about as good as you're going to get. So yeah, it's tough to predict a lot about those wide receivers for Patrick Mahomes, so that makes sense. But here, Baker Mayfield, does this really make sense? I don't know. Are we undervaluing Baker Mayfield if this is what we expect from Chris Godwin, both to be basically high-end or both wide receiver 3s, but still, as you can see by the coloring in the grand scheme of things, both fairly well ranked? Or are we overvaluing Chris Godwin and or Mike Evans? And I tend to think we are a little bit because I have hope for Baker Mayfield. I don't necessarily have faith for Baker Mayfield. But the truth probably lies somewhere in between here. Baker Mayfield's probably being a little bit undervalued. Chris Godwin, Mike Evans a little overvalued. But those are the 2 easiest quarterbacks to stack because obviously you can get Chris Godwin and or Mike Evans in the 5th or 6th round, and then you can wait till the very end of your draft to get Baker Mayfield. Next up in 3rd place, we have Brock Purdy, who, of course, San Francisco 49ers goes in the 15th round. His 2 main targets here go in the 3rd and the 5th round, so that's quite easy to make happen. Sam Howell coming in 4th place. Going to be a similar story here for Sam. Another guy who I think, same with Brock Purdy, I really think maybe are a little bit undervalued, but also there is risk with these wide receivers because there is reason to not have faith in Sam Howell. It's an unknown there. Then Daniel Jones and Jimmy Garoppolo are tied for 5th place on this list. Devontae Jacobs, Jacoby Adams. So obviously Jimmy Garoppolo, pretty easy to pair with any number of these. Although it is to be noted, Hunter Renfrow and Jimmy Garoppolo, not a guaranteed stack to make happen. If you happen to take Hunter Renfrow, there is a chance that Jimmy Garoppolo may be taken before your next pick. And then what was the other? Daniel Jones is another guy who's very easy to make the stack happen. But much like Patrick Mahomes, I wouldn't necessarily call it a good stack to attack because we run into the same problem. There's 5 wide receivers being drafted in the top. I think this list went to about 98 or 99 or 97 wide receivers. None of them, unlike Patrick Mahomes at least, we have a little bit more faith in the quarterback, so they go a little bit higher. But we don't know what 3 guys are going to be on the field the most. We don't know who's going to be a preferred target of Daniel Jones. Honestly, Darius Slayton has as good of a chance of being the best wide receiver as Isaiah Hodgins does. I don't think Paris Campbell's going to see the field a whole lot, but most people do over Wan'Dale Robinson. It's just such an unknown. So although it's easy to get Daniel Jones stacked with a wide receiver, and although the payoff could be great, much like with Patrick Mahomes, based on where you're getting these guys, which one's it going to be? There's a 20% chance of getting it correct, which for best ball is probably worth taking a couple of shots at. For redraft, probably a different story. Then Jimmy Garoppolo tied with that. Kenny Pickett comes in 7th place for easiest quarterbacks to stack. Justin Fields in 8th place. Kenny Pickett, I think we don't even need to look at that. It's the same idea as the Sam Howell. Justin Fields is one of the easier quarterbacks to stack, and I don't think that's a bad one to stack, especially with, either of these two. I don't really like the Chase Claypool stack here, and as you can see, it's tough to get Justin Fields and DJ Moore stacked together. It's Chase Claypool, I think, is pushing this off. But I did do this scientifically. I didn't just make up this list. So it still, in the grand scheme of things, considered to be one of the easier stacks to make happen with someone. Aaron Rodgers also tied with Justin Fields. Fairly easy to get him stacked with some of the targets, but not very easy to get him stacked with Allen Lazard. Of course, Garrett Wilson and him is probably going to be a pretty solid stack to attack, and it's not a hard one to make happen. And then Jared Goff coming in 10th place on this list. Similar kind of story here. And so I'll repeat the top 10. Patrick Mahomes, Baker Mayfield tied for 1st. Brock Purdy, Sam Howell, Daniel Jones, Jimmy Garoppolo tied at 5th. Kenny Pickett, Justin Fields, Aaron Rodgers tied in 8th place, and Jared Goff to wrap up that list. So it's great to know who the easy targets are, but as was noted along the way, just because it's easy to make that happen doesn't mean it's good or that the stack is going to be good, a prime stack. One of the best stacks out there, A.J. Brown and Jalen Hurts, is hard to make happen, and Devonta Smith and Jalen Hurts even harder to make happen. So there's some balance between easy and best when thinking of the targets that we want to attack for stacks. And also, what kind of person are you? Are you an early quarterback guy? You're going to take Patrick Mahomes, Jalen Hurts, Josh Allen, or Lamar Jackson in your draft. You probably know going into your draft that that's your plan generally, if one of them feels about right, unless somebody really falls. So I broke down each of the groupings of quarterbacks based on their draft position into 8 different groups here and took a target balancing easy and best as far as the stack options in those groupings. So early round quarterbacks taken in the 2nd and the 3rd round are Patrick Mahomes, Jalen Hurts, Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, as you see up on the screen. And out of those 4, I think that Josh Allen is going to be your best target. Balances strength, Stephon Diggs and Josh Allen would be obviously one of the best stacks. Jalen Hurts does have the advantage a little bit in the best grouping, but Josh Allen is a little bit easier to attack overall, especially if you like Gabe Davis, and I think that his draft position is totally fair for what you're getting from him. Josh Allen is the winner for the early round quarterbacks as far as a stacking target. A lot of the time here, or in enough cases, you take the wide receiver before you take the quarterback. So, of course, that could also determine who your target might be. But if A.J. Brown and Stephon Diggs are up there, there's another reason to take Stephon Diggs over A.J. Brown, because there is a better chance, if you want to stack your first wide receiver with their quarterback, that you'll be able to stack Josh Allen and Stephon Diggs over Jalen Hurts and A.J. Brown. So let's move on to what I titled the mid/early round quarterbacks. Guys taken between the 4th and the 6th round via ADP is Joe Burrow, Justin Fields, Justin Herbert, and Trevor Lawrence. Lawrence fell a little bit between the mid-round quarterbacks and the mid/early round quarterbacks here, kind of off on his own with ADP, but was closer to this group, so made it into this group. Joe Burrow, though, ultimately is going to be the guy I think would be the best target in this group. Jamar Chase and Joe Burrow's probably the best single stack that you can make happen in the game, and it's not even that hard to make happen if you're drafting early in the draft and get Jamar Chase. So, yeah, Joe Burrow wins this grouping. Not to say it's not close between all 4 of them. The next group, the mid-round quarterbacks, is a small group. You can get them in the 7th and the 8th rounds, and that's going to be Deshaun Watson and Tua Tagovailoa, just those two. Between the two, it's clear here. I think Tua is going to be the target. If you get Tyreek Hill or Jalen Waddle in those first 2 rounds, you're going to have one of the stronger stacks in the game. The Deshaun Watson stack, you know, there's a lot of projecting going on into this, given what we saw last year, even though I am a believer in it. I do think I have Amari Cooper higher than ADP. Then for the mid to late round quarterback targets, guys taken in the 9th and the 10th round via ADP are going to be Anthony Richardson, Dak Prescott, Kirk Cousins, Daniel Jones, and Geno Smith. We can fit them all up on here. Yes, we can. Out of that group, I have Geno Smith as the best target. Just look at all that greenery. You can get either Jackson Smith or Tyler Lockett in the 6th round or DK Metcalf in the 3rd round. And then in the 10th round, you can come around and take Geno Smith. And Geno Smith's one of those guys when I look at this list, and so like between him and Daniel Jones, it's like, are we undervaluing Geno Smith? Especially me, I have Daniel Jones quite high. It's possible. If we're expecting all 3 of these guys to justify their ADP, then I think Geno Smith's going to be better than the 15th quarterback on the season. So it could be a good value there, as well as just being the winner of this group for me. Obviously, CeeDee Lamb, Dak Prescott, really, really strong stack up top. I love the Brandon Cooks, Dak Prescott stack. There's several good options. Then we get to the late round quarterbacks. At this point, we're at the end of the list of quarterbacks where I want, like, if I haven't gotten a quarterback yet, I better get one of these guys as my starter. Otherwise, we're going to start to get very risky as who is our starter. So for the late round quarterbacks, guys going in the 11th and 12th round via ADP, we have Aaron Rodgers, Jared Goff, and Russell Wilson. Out of this group, I picked Jared Goff. Now, initially, I thought Aaron Rodgers, but it's near impossible to get him and Alan Lazard. It's just a little bit easier if you didn't get Amon-Ra St. Brown to go ahead and grab Jameson Williams, pair him up with Jared Goff. All of them, I think, are very similar quarterbacks, and you're getting some similar-ish value out of them as far as how easy it is to stack them. With Russell Wilson, if you miss out early on any of these guys, you could grab him, and you got a pretty good shot at getting Marvin Mims, Tim Patrick. Tim Patrick could way outproduce his draft value. And that brings us to the after-party quarterbacks, where we're beyond the starters. All 3 of these guys are taken in the 13th round via ADP. It's Derek Carr, Matt Stafford, Jordan Love. I think all of them could surprise and do better than where we're drafting them. Out of this group, if I had to pick one, I would have thought it would be Matt Stafford, but it's not the easiest to make things happen with. Whereas Derek Carr, I think it's a little bit easier with overall here. Get him in the 13th round, and I like Rashid Shaheed as far as the back end of the options more than Puka Nacua. Pretty much just as much as Van Jefferson, a little bit less upside, and on par with a Jaden Reed, probably more than a Jaden Reed for purposes of best ball. So Derek Carr, I think, is the target out of these 3. Not to say Matt Stafford's a bad target. And if Jordan Love and Jaden Reed were a little bit easier to get together, I'd like that as a back-end target, but they're very tough to get together. I tried it once. It didn't work. Now we're on to what I called the midnight snack crew quarterbacks. I don't know. They're still up after the after party, but they're about to go to bed and get in a snack. These are the guys taken in the 14th and the 15th round via ADP. It's Kyler Murray, Kenny Pickett, Brock Purdy, and Bryce Young. Out of this bunch, not only is Brock Purdy, I think, the highest upside quarterback, but he also has the highest upside for the stack. Look at that. Deebo Samuel, Brandon Ayuk. You get one of them. Go right ahead and plan on taking Brock Purdy later in your draft. Why not? Well, there is a reason why not. The injury questions. But as long as you're taking the risk of gambling, then I think Brock Purdy's worth a gamble to get on some of your rosters, that's for sure. Now, on to the last group, the after party quarterbacks. Guys taken from the 16th round to potentially being undrafted via ADP. It's CJ Stroud, it's Sam Howell, it's Mac Jones, it's Desmond Ridder, it's Jimmy Garoppolo, Trey Lance, Ryan Tannehill, and Baker Mayfield. And for me, in this group, it's easier to say which quarterbacks, wide receivers, I may not want to target out of the bunch, and that would be CJ Stroud and Mac Jones. Other than that, there's a lot of late quarterbacks that you can take in this group. If you got their wide receiver earlier, that you might as well. Desmond Ridder, Drake London, love that. Devontae Adams, Jimmy Garoppolo could be very strong stack. Trey Lance, you're running into the same but more extreme concerns than we are with Brock Purdy, but lots of upside there regardless. You get the idea. Sam Howell would probably be my pick for the target out of this group, but Desmond Ridder not too far behind. Baker Mayfield, less excited. Yeah, it would be Sam Howell with the Desmond Ridder in second there. Jimmy Garoppolo maybe in second over Desmond Ridder, and then Desmond Ridder. With that, I told you earlier, before we get into the draft here, my second draft that I do, I'm going to go for an even-keeled stack attack. So I want to get I want to spread out where I'm getting my quarterbacks for the most part. I did 3 plans of attack here that I could go with, depending on how the early draft goes and what guys I can get from there. The first plan of attack is going to be going with my early quarterback coming from Buffalo Bills. All 3 of these teams have different bye weeks. All the rounds that I'm going to get these guys in are pretty well spread out, so there's not much competition between these 3 quarterbacks. And then we're going to take a later round quarterback along with an early round quarterback because we did spend up at that position. We can wait a little bit longer. We're going to take Jared Goff is the hope. Pair him up with Amon St. Brown maybe in the second round, or Jamison Williams in the 9th, Marvin Jones at the end of the draft if we really had to. Don't think I would do that anyways. And then a quarterback in the after party group, the last group of mine, which, like I said, Sam Howell I thought was a good target. He worked well here. You could get him in the 17th round, no competition with any wide receivers, quarterbacks from the other 2 groupings. The second plan of attack here would be to grab a mid/early quarterback, get myself, sorry, I meant to show these, but we'll get myself Joe Burrow, potentially the best stack in the game if we can, with Jamar Chase or T. Higgins, even still a very good one. We'll also pair that up with Geno Smith going for the Seattle Seahawks. And so you can see the rounds that the guys go there. DK Metcalf, Jackson Smith, and Jigba. Really no competition. We can get DK after we take Jamar or T in the first round. And we can get Joe Burrow after him. Geno quite a bit later. And obviously we're moving back for the quarterback position here as we get to the after-party quarterbacks. Went with New Orleans, Derek Carr here in the 13th round. And we can pair that up with Chris Olave. If we get Jamar Chase in the first, we can follow that up with Chris Olave, DK Metcalf, come around, take Joe Burrow. That would be the optimal first 3 rounds there for this grouping. The third grouping that we're going to have is Tua Tagovailoa. Hopefully get Tyreek Hill or Jalen Waddle, match that up with Tua in the 8th round. And then we could also potentially get CeeDee Lamb in the first round if we don't get Tyreek Hill, by going for the Dallas Cowboys with my mid to late round quarterback. Obviously, all these are going to be a little bit more condensed in towards the middle round, so we can get Dak Prescott 1 round after we got Tua Tagovailoa. And whether we get Tyreek Hill or CeeDee Lamb, we can get Jalen Waddle or Brandon Cooks a little bit later. And if all else fails, could always get Michael Gallup in the 12th round as well. And then we're going to pair that up with the San Francisco 49ers, get Brock Purdy in the 15th round, and we can match that up with Deebo in the 3rd or Brandon Ayuk in the 5th. That's the 3 even-keeled stacks that I will try to execute one of those in the second draft. But before that, we have the best first 6 rounds, the mega stack here, and this is what I came up with. You can start it off in the first round going with the easier route to make happen, as I think I stated earlier, right, with Josh Allen, would be to go Stephon Diggs. However, if he's gone, we could always take A.J. Brown in the first round. We can get T. Higgins in the second. Then we come back around. We'll get Josh Allen or Jalen Hurts in the third round to match up with Stephon Diggs or A.J. Brown, whichever route we went there. Then in the fourth round, we can get Joe Burrow to match up with T. Higgins. And then, so I think those are all up here. And then in the fifth round, we can come around and we take Christian Kirk. And we should be able to come around in the sixth round and match that up with Trevor Lawrence. So that is the plan of attack. I do have some fail safes here if things fail. I'm ready to go. Let's see if we can't pull off the Buffalo Bills, Cincinnati, Jacksonville Jaguars stack. I'll see you with my first pick. All right, I got the fifth pick. I won't be talking a whole lot through these drafts. I'm just going to scoot through them quickly because I spent so much time on the other stuff. But we're going to start this off with Stephon Diggs. Let's see how this works. But T. Higgins should be pretty easy to get around the second round, so that's helpful. Okay, so T. Higgins ended up getting taken at pick 18, quite a bit earlier than ADP. So my backup plan here was Waddle, if Waddle was still available. He got taken. Calvin Ridley is my second backup plan. So let's go with that. A little early. Jalen Hurts goes one pick before me. We get Josh Allen. So I restructured my targets list with the Calvin Ridley addition. Spoke about that beforehand. So I could go DJ Moore and Justin Fields, which is obviously a very tight fit there, or Jerry Jeudy and Russell Wilson. And we'll take Trevor Lawrence after that. Okay, so I realized both of the backup plans that I came up here are week 13 and week 9 buys, which really messes with the overall plan. So, we're going to go with the Joe Burrow and Tyler Boyd stack, I guess. I don't know that Trevor Lawrence is going to make it around the next turn, but it's close. It's worth the risk. So we're actually going to go for the quarterback running back stack here. Going to grab Joe Mixon, and that gives us a different element. But I like Joe better than Tyler Boyd anyways. I don't really want the three of them. Not that that would be terrible, but I'm not going to target it. So there you go. We get a different kind of stack in here. We adapt. I will say one thing I don't mind about that with trying to go with this ultra super stack where we'll probably be too strong at quarterback to where it's just not an advantage in a sense. By going with Joe Burrow and Joe Mixon, now I have the kind of stack where they should offset each other. So Joe Mixon should have some of his bigger games when Joe Burrow has some of his less big games. And so now for those weeks, we'll have points coming from somewhere else where we have Josh Allen anyways as our number one quarterback. So most weeks we should be looking pretty darn good there, and hopefully just Josh Allen, Joe Burrow don't bomb on the same kind of week. But other than that, that is something of a positive. Not what I was going for, but still somewhat of a strategical positive. Oh, what a shame. We're just not going to be able to pull off the ultimate stack here. Trevor Lawrence goes. So what are we? Sean Watson to Dak. We could go for a little bit later. And I don't think we need to target a Dallas. Brandon Cooks, 7th round. What round are we in? It's going to be early. It's early. Draft him. All right, so we're going to break here. We're going to take Cam Akers. Would like Dameon Pierce, but the bye week issue. And I'll see you at the end of this draft. Should be able to make this Dak Prescott thing happen. All right, so here's the team I ended up with. This is the best projection that I've ever had. Had Josh Allen, Joe Burrow, the panic quick choice of Dak Prescott, followed with my running backs, which I think this is like the underappreciated starting running back group the ultimate of that group. We have Joe Mixon, who's probably being picked up as a value currently. Cam Akers could be the same story. I'm concerned about it, but went for it with this roster. Why not? James Conner, I think underappreciated. Brian Robinson could definitely be a surprise this season. It's in the cards. And Raheem Mostert, who, as far as I'm concerned, is currently the starter of the Miami Dolphins. Wide receivers got Stephon Diggs, Calvin Ridley, Brandon Cooks to match up with Dak Prescott, Odell Beckham Jr., Marquez Valdez-Scantling, Rashid Shaheed, Tim Patrick to round out my wide receivers. I like the upside in the group. It's kind of an all-upside group there. And Chig, Luke Musgrave, Isaiah Likely for my tight end. So a lot of upside on the roster. A pretty heavy bye week exposure, and obviously this would be expected, having some team exposure to the same team. But yeah, that is that roster. Now I'm going to do it again. I'm not going to try for that stack again, but that was fun. If you happen to be able to pull it off, let me know. It'd be pretty fun to see how that ended up. And so yeah, if you actually do pull it off, show me your roster. And next up, I will try to do either the Joe Burrow, Geno Smith, Derek Carr lineup, or the Tua, Dak, Brock Purdy lineup, depending on where I start the draft off at. So I'll see you there. All right, so I got pick 4, so Tyreek Hill it will be. So I will be going for a mid-round target, a mid/late round target, and a midnight snack crew target. As far as my quarterbacks go, that's Tua, Dak, and Brock Purdy. I guess I'll be going Dak and Brandon Cooks again. Not the worst thing in the world. So interestingly enough, in a video where I did all quarterback wide receiver stacks, I'm going to go 2 running back quarterback stacks throughout. Now, unlike the last one where I went with Joe Mixon, that's kind of a counter stack in my opinion, where when one does well, the other might not do so great. But in the case of Tony Pollard and Dak Prescott, now remember I just took Brandon Cooks last draft, so I'm more than happy to diversify a little bit on this roster. I think Tony Pollard is one of not a whole lot of running backs who actually probably have some sort of positive correlation as far as a stack with their quarterback. So the Dak Prescott, Tony Pollard stack will work on some level like a wide receiver quarterback stack can, I believe. So that's the route I went with my second pick here. We're going to reach a little bit for Deebo Samuel. Not a favorite target of mine, but he is the best matchup for Brock Purdy here. So let's do it. So I'll take Travis Etienne here. I have my own choice of picks for a little while I wait for quarterbacks. I was going to take Drake London if he made it to me, got taken 1 pick in front of me. That would have been a nice backup plan in case Brock Purdy went earlier than I expected. I missed out on him or even one of the other quarterbacks. Spoke about Desmond Ridder a little bit earlier. Not a bad match between him and Drake London. I think could be a fruitful stack for where you can get both of them. So with that, I will meet you at the end of the draft unless anything interesting happens along the way. So I'm in a bit of a pickle here. My next pick is pick 93, so it's very close to 2. I could push that off. I'm just thinking, so Gabe Davis versus like Michael Thomas. You know what? We'll do it. That's a trade-off I'm willing to make. All right, here we are in the 14th round, and I will complete my trifecta stack here with Brock Purdy. Technically a round early, but it's the end of the 14th round, so just wanted to secure that. That being said, I do have a few helpings of Brock Purdy already. This is probably my 3rd draft with him in it, which out of 8 or 9 drafts, like 33% of them, I think. I'm planning on going Curtis Samuel. I probably could have gone with a tight end or Curtis Samuel there and then gotten Sam Howell to pack up with Curtis Samuel. I'll see you at the end of the draft. And there's our draft projection. Not quite as high as the previous draft, but we did set out to do what we wanted to do here. Have Tua paired up with Tyreek Hill. We have Dak Prescott paired up with Tony Pollard. I thought about doubling that up with Jake Ferguson for my last tight end too. Could have done that. I don't know that that'd be wise. I don't know. Maybe it is. Brock Purdy as my third quarterback. Then we have Tony Pollard, Travis Etienne, Kenneth Walker, Devon Achane, and Devin Singletary there for my running backs, so I feel comfortable there. Wide receivers, Tyreek Hill, Deebo Samuel, Treylon Burks, George Pickens, Jonathan Mingo, Curtis Samuel, and Wan'Dale Robinson to round that group out. It's good. It's good. And then Greg Dulcich, Tyler Conklin, Luke Musgrave. I wasn't going to go Luke Musgrave again, but that's how it worked out. So, yeah, that's that team. I think the other one was better where I went for that ultra stack, but it's close. Running backs are pretty darn solid here. Quarterbacks, I think, could perform close to the other group, but, probably not quite as well. But they could. A little bit of luck. So, thank you very much. Hope you learned something from this video. I will see you soon in another one. Peace out.